In the early morning of June 8, 793 AD, thick mist hung over the cold waters of the North Sea. From the fog, Viking longships appeared silently near the sacred island of Lindisfarne, off the coast of Northumbria in present-day England. What followed would shock Christian Europe, mark the beginning of the Viking Age, and permanently reshape the continent's history. The monastery of Lindisfarne was not just another religious site. It was one of the most revered spiritual centers in the Christian world, home to the relics of St. Cuthbert and believed to be under divine protection. For the monks and nuns living there, the island represented peace, devotion, and sacred isolation. That belief in safety would prove tragically misplaced. A sacred island under attack. When the Viking warriors landed, the monastery had no defenses. The religious community had heard rumors of raids on coastal settlements, but no one imagined that a holy site like Lindisfarne would become a target. The attackers arrived armed with axes and swords, moving swiftly through the monastery. Those who resisted were killed, sometimes at the very altars where they had spent their lives in prayer. The raiders seized gold and silver treasures, looted sacred relics, and carried off richly decorated manuscripts. Buildings were burned, and the monastery's library, containing priceless religious texts, was destroyed. The assault was brutal, but it was not only about wealth. The Vikings also captured members of the religious community, particularly women living in the monastery. Instead of killing them, the raiders shackled these captives and took them aboard their ships, beginning a journey into slavery. This event sent shockwaves across Christian Europe. To many contemporaries, the attack seemed like divine punishment or a sign of the approaching end of the world. Why monasteries were prime targets? The raid on Lindisfarne was not random. Early medieval monasteries were attractive targets for several practical reasons. First, they held immense wealth. Religious institutions stored valuable objects, including gold vessels, jeweled manuscripts, and sacred relics. Second, monasteries were usually located on isolated coastlines with little or no military protection. Third, they housed educated individuals who could be valuable as slaves. Monks and nuns possessed skills rare in the early medieval world. Many could read and write Latin, maintain records, produce manuscripts, and practice herbal medicine. These abilities made them economically useful captives. The Viking system of slavery, known in Old Norse society as thraldom, played a central role in their economy. Enslaved people were used for domestic labor, agricultural work, and sometimes integrated into households in more complex social roles. Captives taken from raids across Britain and Ireland were frequently transported to Scandinavia or sold in international slave markets. Life in captivity. The journey from Britain to Scandinavia could take weeks. Captives were held in harsh conditions aboard longships, confined in dark spaces, poorly fed, and deprived of dignity. Such treatment often served to break resistance and prepare prisoners for their new status. Upon arrival in Scandinavia, captives were examined and assigned roles according to their perceived usefulness. Younger individuals might be integrated into households, while others performed labor-intensive work such as farming, weaving, or domestic service. Historical evidence suggests that enslaved women often carried heavy responsibilities. They worked in households, produced textiles, cared for children, and contributed to the economic life of their captors. Some eventually became part of local communities, especially if they bore children who were recognized by their fathers. While conditions varied depending on the household, slavery in the Viking world was fundamentally coercive and often harsh. Captives had little control over their lives, and their status depended entirely on their owners. Religion and cultural conflict. The Viking raids were not only economic but also cultural encounters between two very different worlds. Christian Europe saw monasteries as sacred spaces dedicated to God. For Norse raiders, these sites represented wealth and opportunity. At the same time, the encounters exposed both sides to new ideas and beliefs. Some captives maintained their Christian faith, practicing it privately even while living in pagan societies. Over time, interactions between Christian captives and Norse communities contributed to cultural exchange. In later centuries, Scandinavia gradually adopted Christianity, a transformation influenced by trade, political change, and long-term contact with Christian Europe. Thus, the Viking raids that initially represented violent confrontation also created channels for cultural and religious transformation. The psychological impact on Europe. The attack on Lindisfarne terrified medieval Europe. Chroniclers described the event with horror, portraying the raiders as divine punishment for human sin. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle recorded the devastation, emphasizing the unprecedented violence against a sacred institution. The raid marked the beginning of a new era of insecurity for coastal communities. Monasteries that had once symbolized peace now became vulnerable targets. In response, many religious centers relocated inland or built defensive structures to protect themselves. Over the next 2 centuries, Viking raids spread across Britain, Ireland, and continental Europe. Monasteries in Scotland and Ireland were repeatedly attacked, demonstrating that Lindisfarne was only the beginning. Historical evidence and uncertainty. Much of what is known about the Viking Age comes from fragmentary sources. Contemporary Christian records describe the raids from the perspective of victims, often emphasizing destruction and suffering. Norse sagas, written centuries later, provide additional insights but blend history with legend. Because of these limited sources, historians cannot reconstruct every detail of events, such as the fate of specific captives. Archaeological discoveries, however, offer valuable clues. Burial sites across Scandinavia reveal individuals with mixed cultural backgrounds, suggesting the movement of people across regions during the Viking Age. Modern DNA studies also show genetic connections between populations in the British Isles and Scandinavia, confirming large-scale migration and integration resulting from Viking activity. The gradual end of the Viking Age. By the late 10th and 11th centuries, Viking society itself began to change. Scandinavian rulers increasingly adopted Christianity, established centralized kingdoms, and integrated into European political systems. The Norman conquest of England in 1066 is often considered one of the final milestones marking the end of the Viking Age. Over time, the violent raids that once defined Viking expansion gave way to trade, settlement, and cultural exchange. Scandinavia became part of the broader Christian European world, completing a transformation that had begun centuries earlier. Legacy of the Lindisfarne raid. The attack on Lindisfarne remains one of the most symbolic events in European history. It represents the collision of cultures, the vulnerability of sacred institutions, and the dramatic beginning of the Viking Age. The raid also highlights the complex human experiences behind historical events. Beyond battles and political change were individuals whose lives were permanently altered, monks who lost their homes, captives who were forced into new societies, and communities transformed by conflict. Today, Lindisfarne stands as a powerful reminder of how a single event can reshape history. What began as a sudden coastal raid triggered centuries of warfare, migration, cultural exchange, and religious transformation. The Viking Age was not simply a story of conquest. It was a period of profound interaction between different civilizations, producing lasting changes in language, religion, and identity across Europe. And on that mist-covered morning in 793 AD, when Viking ships first appeared on the horizon, a new chapter of history had begun, one whose consequences would echo for generations. If you enjoyed this video and want more powerful historical stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe for more content that uncovers the truths history tried to forget.